Some mysteries refuse to be forgotten. Some legends never fade. And some conspiracies demand to be uncovered. This is Codename Unknown. Mysteries, conspiracies, and legends. Where expert investigator and host Jackson Wolf dives deep into history's most perplexing enigmas, chilling folklore, and secretive cover-ups. Each week, he pushes the boundaries of what we know, uncovering hidden truths and questioning the stories we've been told. The search for answers begins now. Open your mind, question everything, and step into the shadows.
Welcome to Codename Unknown. I'm your host, Jackson Wolf, and today we're trekking into subarctic night to meet the Wendigo. Is it a curse, a legend, a crime story, or a mirror held up to human hunger? We'll separate indigenous teachings from pop horror, sift colonial court records, and test modern sightings with an investigator's checklist. Along the way, we'll ask who benefits when fear spreads and what truth means when a story polices survival ethics. A note before we begin. The Wendigo belongs to Algonquian-speaking peoples. Some knowledge is sacred, and I'll respect boundaries, citing community-approved sources where appropriate. My aim isn't to sensationalize, but to understand. Keep an open, curious mind, and by the end you'll have tools to think clearly about this chilling, complicated figure for tonight. Let's ground ourselves in where the Wendigo comes from. The figure appears across Algonquian-speaking nations, including the Cree, Ojibwe, Innu, and Saulteaux, with names like Wetiko, Wetiko, and Wendigo. Pronunciations and spellings vary by language and community, but core themes echo: winter, famine, greed, and the breaking of taboos that keep people alive. This isn't a lone monster stalking the woods so much as a spirit condition that overtakes humans when hunger and selfishness eclipse kinship duties. In stories, a person may become gaunt, lips chewed from insatiable craving, heart iced by cold, and they consume human flesh, growing more ravenous the more they eat. The lesson is stark. Hunger without restraint devours community. It's also ecological knowledge encoded as narrative, shaped by boreal forests, snow, thin game, and hard choices made at 40 below. When elders speak of a Wendigo curse, they're often describing a social and moral mechanism rather than sorcery. In small winter camps, survival depended on reciprocity, food sharing, and restraint. The curse labels the path of excess, hoarding during scarcity, abandoning the vulnerable, and crossing the ultimate taboo of cannibalism. Stories warn that once you take that step, appetite becomes endless, humanity thins, and you endanger everyone. The threat isn't only metaphysical, it's regulatory. Naming someone's behavior as Wendigo could mobilize communal responses, watchfulness, shunning, ritual correction, to protect the group. Ethically, the legend teaches that hunger must be managed collectively, desire bounded by care. And crucially, these teachings are not about demonizing people who starve. They are about the obligations that keep families alive when snow closes in, and the line between need and harm grows perilously thin for everyone listening. Traditional descriptions usually present the Wendigo as a human-like figure, emaciated, skin clinging to bone, eyes sunken, lips rubbed raw, sometimes with a heart of ice or a smell of decay. It is a spirit of hunger that inhabits or transforms a person. Pop culture often swaps that for a towering elk-headed monster with antlers and hooves. The antlered image is striking but relatively modern, shaped by horror films, video games, and internet art. Why does it matter? Because imagery guides interpretation. A bestial forest giant implies an external predator, something you can hunt and kill. The traditional figure indicts human choices and social breakdown. If we replace moral technology with a monster of the week, we risk losing the teachings that help people navigate winter, scarcity, and the temptations of power and survival. One of the most cited historical cases is Swift Runner, A Cree man in Alberta tried in 1879 for murdering and cannibalizing family members during a brutal winter. He had lived near a Hudson's Bay post, spoke English, and even worked as a guide for the Northwest Mounted Police. Testimony recorded by colonial officials claimed he spoke of a Wendigo urge before the killings. It's a horrifying case, but we have to read the file critically. Alcohol, mission pressures, and the collapse of bison herds created conditions of trauma and starvation. The court relied on interpreters and on cultural frames hostile to Cree law. Swift Runner's story shows how hunger, colonial disruption, and belief can converge, but the written record was produced by authorities with their own agendas about civilization, criminality, and indigenous spirituality and control. Another emblematic episode is the 1906 arrest of Jawuno Gijigo Gaubo, known as Jack Fiddler, an Ojibwe leader and renowned healer. Canadian police charged him with murdering a woman said to be turning Wendigo. Family members testified they asked him to perform a mercy killing to prevent catastrophe. Fiddler maintained he had defeated many Wendigo spirits in his life. Again, sources are colonial, affidavits taken under duress, translated through layers, and situated in a moment when Canada was criminalizing Indigenous governance and medicine. Mission diaries and fur trade journals add color but also bias, often labeling ceremonies as superstition. When scholars reassess these cases, they see conflicts between legal systems. What a community understood as protective ritual could appear to outsiders as homicide. The question becomes not only what happened, but who had authority to interpret it law. The phrase Wendigo psychosis was popularized by early 20th century anthropologists and later by sensational psychology articles. It framed reports of cannibalistic ideation during famines among Algonquian peoples as a culture-bound syndrome. Some clinicians proposed diagnostic criteria, others doubted its existence altogether. Contemporary scholarship is far more cautious. First, many historical examples collapse hunger, grief, poisoning, alcohol, and violence into a single exotic label. Second, pathologizing indigenous belief can erase the ethical and ecological context we discussed. Third, when outsiders medicalize indigenous categories, they risk turning stories that enforce survival norms into evidence of inherent pathology. Today, most researchers treat Wendigo psychosis as a problematic construct, useful to discuss how culture shapes distress, but unreliable as a discrete diagnosis. The safer interpretation is that extreme deprivation, stress, and suggestion can produce terrifying thoughts. Then local cosmologies give those thoughts names and responses and community-led paths to care. To understand why Wendigo teachings developed, picture the environment. The subarctic and boreal zones bring short daylight, unbroken cold, and long distances between food sources. Hunting failures cascade, traps freeze, snowshoed travel drains calories. Malnutrition impairs judgment, slows reaction, and weakens immunity to infection. Isolation amplifies conflict. In such conditions, a household hoarding fish or flour could doom neighbors, yet sharing too widely could doom themselves. The stories encode practical rules: store wisely before freeze-up, rotate traps, keep lines of communication open, and never abandon the injured. They also warn that desperation can twist perception. A companion may look like meat when you're starving. This is not mere horror, it's fieldcraft, ethics, and mental health guidance developed over generations of winter learning. Seen this way, the legend safeguards survival better than fear. Psychology helps explain the more unsettling edges. Severe caloric deficit produces cognitive changes, irritability, intrusive food imagery, impulsivity, and in extreme cases, hallucinations. Cold exposure and sleep loss magnify it. Suggestion matters too. If your cultural frame names predatory hunger with a vivid persona, starving thoughts may adopt that mask. Fear spreads socially, what sociologists call moral panic, especially when communities are traumatized and looking for explanations. Scapegoating can follow, targeting eccentric neighbors or the recently bereaved. None of this means the stories are just psychology. Rather, the mind, the body, the season, and the story interlock. The Wendigo tale provides language for danger, and language shapes perception. In hard winters, words can comfort, guide, and also misfire, leading to tragic misinterpretations unless tempered by wisdom and careful leadership within trusted circles. In recent decades, Wendigo has also become a metaphor some indigenous writers and activists use for the insatiable hunger of colonialism and extractive capitalism. In this telling, Wendigo isn't a lone winter cannibal, but a systemic appetite that devours forests, rivers, languages, and futures while never feeling full. The critique targets institutions that normalize greed as growth and externalize costs onto communities and the land. Framing it this way reconnects the legend to its moral core. Unchecked desire destroys relationships. Whether you accept the metaphor or not, it invites uncomfortable questions. How do we feed needs without feeding an addiction to more? What counts as enough? And who gets consumed when we pretend there are no limits? Seen globally, Wendigo critiques empire, marketing, and the engines of extraction and debt. Today, many indigenous knowledge keepers ask outsiders to approach Wendigo material with care. Some teachings are shareable, others belong within families, ceremonies, and languages not recorded for public consumption. When in doubt, cite living community voices and follow protocol. Ask permission, respect boundaries, and avoid mixing traditions for entertainment. Appropriation is a real harm, so is flattening dozens of nations' perspectives into one pan-Indian trope. If you're a creator, consider collaborating with advisors and compensating them. If you're a listener, pause before repeating the most sensational claim you read online. The point of the legend isn't to exoticize northern peoples, it's to uphold relationships. Respect for that purpose is the first protection against misunderstanding. When communities lead the narrative, accuracy grows and harm decreases dramatically. What about modern sightings? Reports cluster around the Great Lakes and boreal forests, often in late fall or deep winter. Many feature a tall, gaunt silhouette, glowing eyes, and inhuman cries. Before assuming a spirit, consider misidentifications. Moose can stand over 6 feet at the shoulder. In fog or moonlight, their muzzle and dewlap red as a long skeletal face. Black bears with mange lose fur and look disturbingly thin, especially in spring when food is low. Freeze-thaw cycles distort tracks, turning a human boot print into splayed, monstrous shapes. Wind can make tree trunks screech. Foxes and lynx produce screams many describe as not earthly. And yes, hoaxes circulate. Costumes, edited audio, creepypasta. The internet accelerates rumor into legend, then back into evidence within days. Skepticism and local knowledge are your best first tools always. If you think you've encountered something, slow down and document. Start with location, date, time, temperature, wind, and snow depth. Note the season and the nearest water or game trails. Photograph tracks with a scale. Follow them carefully to see gait patterns, straddle width, and whether the trail crosses obstacles realistically. Record sounds on your phone with context, what direction, how far, how long, and whether other wildlife reacted. Look for diet clues, caches, scat, bone chew marks consistent with known animals. Describe behavior. Was it avoiding you, curious, or aggressive? Who else witnessed it, and can their accounts be taken independently? Then consult local hunters, trappers, and knowledge keepers. They can often identify what you saw. If they advise caution or silence, listen. Evidence includes consent, and safety comes before any thrill in the field. Let's tug on the conspiracy thread. Sensational media benefit from turning nuanced indigenous teachings into clickbait monsters. Platforms profit from engagement. Fear engages. Meanwhile, institutions historically impose their own narratives. Missions labeling ceremonies as devilry, police criminalizing healers, and courts elevating their records as objective truth. Was anything suppressed? In a sense, yes. The authority of indigenous law and context was sidelined. Another angle, film and gaming industries recycle the antlered archetype because it sells, crowding out accurate voices. Cui bono? Advertisers, studios, and anyone monetizing dread. That doesn't mean every eerie report is fake. It means incentives skew toward exaggeration. To counterbalance, we need grounded methods, transparency about sources, and space for communities to correct the record without being drowned out by algorithms. Independent archives and indigenous media are crucial allies in truth-telling and accountability. Listeners often ask about rituals to counter the Wendigo. Here, humility is essential. Some communities share general guidance publicly: maintain kinship, keep the fire, honor food, fast with protocol, and seek help from recognized healers. Specific ceremonies, songs, and medicines are not mine to teach, and broadcasting them would be disrespectful and potentially dangerous out of context. When researching, look for community-authorized publications and speakers. If a video lacks attribution or mixes cultures, treat it skeptically. Protection begins with relationship. Learn from people, not just posts. On a practical level, travel prepared, avoid isolation when storms threaten, and care for each other through winter. The strongest ward is reciprocity, because it interrupts the very greed the legend condemns at its root. The Wendigo isn't unique in warning about hunger's distortions. Across the world, we find famine spirits and winter monsters that police taboos. The Norse Draugr haunting burial mounds when communities mishandle the dead. The Japanese Gaki, hungry ghosts born from greed. Scottish tales of the Baoban Sith luring travelers to ruin. Even European werewolf trials tangled with starvation and social anxiety. These figures encode seasonal knowledge, store ethical lessons, and give names to fears that would otherwise destabilize communities. So what counts as true? If truth means a lab specimen, maybe not. If truth means a cultural technology that helps people survive winter, restrain greed, and recognize danger in themselves, then yes, resoundingly. The unresolved edge, the part that still terrifies, keeps attention sharp, which might be the point. Living with mystery can be ethical, practical, and intellectually honest in hard northern seasons. This has been Codename Unknown. Today we trace the Wendigo from Algonquian origins through court files, psychiatric debates, winter ecology, psychology, Wendigo critiques, sightings, methods, media incentives, and protections. We asked what truth means when a legend functions as cultural technology. My hope is that you leave with sharper tools, skepticism that serves respect, curiosity that listens, and a checklist that privileges safety and consent. I want to hear from you, Indigenous listeners and knowledge keepers, to guide corrections or additions. Send recordings, questions, or histories with context, dates, places, and permission. Please avoid sacred details and anonymize sensitive names. Email codename unknownpod@protonmail.com or use our site form. Until next time, keep your fire tended and your ethics warmer than the wind.
You've been listening to Codename Unknown: Mysteries, Conspiracies, and Legends. The search for answers never stops, and the truth is always waiting to be uncovered. If you enjoyed the journey, subscribe to us, and don't miss what's next. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning everything.